Maria's hands trembled as she wiped down the last of the empty tables. It was closing time at the upscale restaurant where she had worked for the past 5 years. But tonight felt different. As she passed by the VIP section, her heart skipped a beat when she saw him. Cristiano Ronaldo, sitting alone at a table, his back to the room, lost in thought. She had heard whispers all evening, but seeing him in person was unreal. She had admired him from afar, his legacy of greatness stretching far beyond the football field. But she wasn't here to gawk. She was here to work. A sudden crash broke through the hum of the quieting restaurant. Someone had knocked over a chair in the corner, and before she could react, a man's voice boomed through the room, directing his anger toward the star athlete. The atmosphere shifted. The energy in the room became thick with tension, and Maria felt her stomach churn. She could hear the man now, yelling at Cristiano, demanding something. Money? A signed jersey? Maria's instincts kicked in, and without thinking, she stepped forward. "Hey, you need to calm down," she called out, her voice shaking but firm. The man turned to her with eyes full of fury. He pointed a finger at her and spat, "Stay out of it, you." In an instant, she felt the weight of his gaze and knew her fate was sealed. Maria's heart hammered in her chest. She had just made a choice that would change her life forever. Maria's life had been a constant balancing act, a tightrope walk between what was and what could be. She had spent the last 5 years of her life serving at La Bellevue, a high-end restaurant tucked in the heart of the city, with its velvet curtains, marble floors, and a menu that tasted of luxury. The lights in the restaurant were soft, casting shadows that flickered like the edges of her dreams. Those moments when she imagined a life beyond serving dishes and making sure the wine was poured just right. Maria had big dreams, bigger than most people in her position dared to imagine. Every day, she'd close her eyes for a split second while she refilled the water glasses, and she'd picture herself out of this place, living a life that wasn't just about making ends meet, but one that left a mark. Maybe she would become a writer. Maybe she'd run her own business. Maybe, just maybe, she would be someone important. But tonight, as she moved from table to table, something felt off. The usual chatter of the restaurant seemed louder than it usually did, every clink of silverware on china cutting through the air in a way that felt unsettling. The tension felt thick, like the entire room was holding its breath, and it wasn't just the customers. It was her. Maria had a feeling, one she couldn't quite shake, that tonight would be different. She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear and glanced over at the VIP section, where a high-profile guest was expected to arrive. There had been rumors, the kind of talk that makes the restaurant buzz long before a celebrity walks through the door. It was Cristiano Ronaldo. The mere mention of his name made the staff jump with excitement, as though a hero was about to enter their midst. Maria, however, found herself oddly disconnected from the hoopla. It wasn't that she didn't admire him. It was just that her thoughts were elsewhere. As she passed by the gleaming bar, she caught a brief exchange between 2 waiters, their whispers of "it's really him" lingering in the air like perfume. For a split second, she felt something she couldn't place. A longing? Disappointment? The buzzing in her ears drowned everything out. She could see him now, Cristiano Ronaldo himself, seated at a table near the far corner. His back was to the room, but Maria couldn't help but notice how much space he seemed to occupy. An aura of confidence, even isolation. Maria's attention snapped back to reality as the door to the kitchen swung open, and the manager gestured at her to handle the VIP section. She gave a brief nod, trying to shake off the feeling that something was about to go terribly wrong. The night wore on, and everything seemed to follow its usual routine until the unthinkable happened. The loud crash of a chair suddenly echoed across the room, and the man who had been sitting near Ronaldo stood, shaking with rage. Maria froze, eyes wide, sensing the shift in the air. There was something in the way he spoke, something about the threat in his voice, that made her stomach churn. But she couldn't look away. It was like a train wreck waiting to happen, and for reasons she couldn't yet understand, Maria was about to be swept into it. "You won't believe what happens next," she whispered to herself, the words tasting strange on her tongue. Something was about to change. Maria didn't know it yet, but her life was on the edge of a cliff, and tonight, she would take a leap. The room felt like it had frozen in time. Maria's hand, still gripping the cleaning cloth, hung in the air as the angry man in the VIP section continued his shouting match with Cristiano Ronaldo. But it wasn't just the volume of his voice that made her stomach tighten. It was the venom in his words, the threat that lingered like a storm about to break. She had always been taught to stay out of the drama, to avoid conflict, especially in a place like La Bellevue. But tonight, everything was different. The man, dressed in a dark suit, his face flushed with rage, was demanding something from Ronaldo, his voice rising with each word. Maria couldn't make out all the details, but she could see the tension in Cristiano's posture. He wasn't fighting back, but his jaw was clenched, his eyes cold as he stared the man down. Maria's pulse quickened. She couldn't ignore it anymore. Her feet moved before her mind could catch up. In one swift motion, she was standing between the two men, her heart pounding in her chest. "Hey!" she called out, her voice shaking with a mix of fear and determination. "You need to calm down. This isn't the place for this." The room fell silent, all eyes on Maria. Even the clinking of glasses stopped. It was as if the world had paused, waiting for what would happen next. She wasn't sure why she had stepped in. Maybe it was the injustice of the situation, or maybe it was the unspoken way Cristiano had looked at her, almost as if he was silently pleading for someone to break the tension. But whatever the reason, Maria had made her choice. She couldn't just stand there and watch. The man turned on her with a scowl, his eyes wild with fury. "Who do you think you are?" he spat, stepping forward until they were almost nose to nose. The fear in Maria's chest surged, but she stood her ground. "This is none of your business, you little waitress." Before she could react, he shoved her back, causing her to stumble and nearly fall. The action was so sudden, so violent, that Maria gasped for breath, her heart racing. But what happened next was even more unexpected. Cristiano, who had been silently observing the entire exchange, stood up abruptly. His eyes locked onto the man, and for the first time he spoke, his voice sharp, demanding. "That's enough." His words cut through the tension like a knife. The man blinked in shock, taking a step back, but his anger didn't dissipate. "You think you can tell me what to do?" he growled. Maria, still trying to recover from the shock of the encounter, felt a strange mix of relief and dread as Ronaldo placed a hand on her shoulder, guiding her gently behind him. The man glared at them both but ultimately walked out in a huff, muttering curses under his breath. Maria stood there, her breath ragged, trying to process what had just happened. She had done the right thing, hadn't she? She had stood up for someone who was being wronged, someone who, despite his celebrity, had been cornered by a man with a twisted sense of entitlement. But now, as she looked up at Cristiano, her moment of courage felt fragile. There was no time to dwell on it. Her manager, who had been watching from the bar, approached swiftly, his expression dark. "Maria, my office. Now." The weight of the consequences settled on her shoulders like a ton of bricks. She had acted out of instinct, out of a need to protect, but now she was paying the price. As she walked toward the office, her mind raced. Was standing up for what was right worth the cost? The world of La Bellevue was unforgiving, and her job, her only source of stability, was slipping away with every step. But in that moment, she realized something deep within her. She had crossed a line, and now there was no going back. Maria sat alone in her small apartment, the weight of the day pressing down on her like a physical force. The sound of the TV in the background was a dull hum, her usual escape, but tonight it couldn't drown out the thoughts swirling in her mind. She replayed the scene in the restaurant over and over. The man's anger, her rash decision to step in, Cristiano's quiet support, and then the manager's cold words as he fired her. Her apartment was sparse, the walls bare except for a few faded photos of family and friends she'd lost touch with. It was a reminder of the life she'd always dreamed of escaping, trapped in a cycle of low-paying jobs, underappreciated and unnoticed. But today, that small, invisible life had slipped further away. She'd been fired, And for what? For standing up for someone who probably didn't even remember her name? A wave of guilt washed over her. Could she have handled it differently? Was it worth it? Was it worth it? She whispered aloud to the empty room. Her voice echoed back at her, sounding weaker than she felt. She wasn't sure. What if she had just stayed quiet? What if she hadn't intervened in that heated moment? Her chest tightened at the thought of the man's face, his contempt for her in every word he'd shouted. But then, there was Cristiano's hand on her shoulder, his eyes full of something unspoken. Was that gratitude? Or was he just relieved that someone had stood up to the man for him? Her phone buzzed, snapping her from her thoughts. It was a text from her older brother, Malik. "How's everything, Maria? You okay?" She stared at the screen, her finger hovering over the keys. How could she explain to him that the weight of everything, the disappointment, the anger, the fear, was too much to bear alone? They were close, but he was miles away, working in another city, and Maria had always tried to keep things together for him, never wanting him to worry about her. But today, she couldn't keep up the pretense. She texted back, "Got fired today. Don't know what to do." Moments passed before his reply came. "What happened?" She sighed, biting her lip. The words felt heavy, like stones in her mouth. She typed slowly, her fingers trembling. "I stood up for someone. It wasn't my place, I guess. Now, I'm out of a job." Malik's response came quickly. "I'm sorry, Maria. I know it's tough, but you did the right thing. Don't doubt yourself." His words were meant to comfort, but they only stirred up the confusion in her heart. Did she really do the right thing? Or had she just made a rash decision that cost her the only thing keeping her afloat? Her mind drifted back to the restaurant, the silence after the confrontation, the look in Cristiano's eyes. There was something more to him than just a celebrity. The way he had stood up to the man after she intervened, the quiet weight of his actions. It made her wonder, did he see something in her that she didn't even recognize in herself? The buzzing of her phone again pulled her from her thoughts. This time it wasn't Malik. It was a number she didn't recognize. She hesitated, the unease creeping back into her chest. Her thumb hovered over the screen before she clicked open the message. "This is Cristiano Ronaldo's assistant. Cristiano would like to speak with you. Please call me at this number as soon as possible." Maria blinked at the words, her breath catching in her throat. She felt dizzy, as if the world had just shifted beneath her feet. Was this a prank? Or was something much bigger about to happen? The tension that had been building inside her for hours suddenly intensified, and she realized this was no ordinary day. What did Cristiano want with her? What had she gotten herself into? Maria paced back and forth in her small apartment, the message from Cristiano's assistant burning in her pocket. It felt surreal, like she was waiting for a punchline that would never come. She had never expected this. A phone call that would pull her back into the whirlwind of a world she had never been a part of. A world of stars, power, and everything she had once dreamed about but thought she could never touch. Her hands were clammy as she dialed the number. Her heart thudded loudly in her chest, and she found herself taking shallow breaths as the line rang. What could Cristiano possibly want with her? She had barely exchanged more than a few words with him. "Hello, Maria?" A calm, professional voice answered on the other end. "Yes, this is Maria," she said, her voice cracking slightly. She cleared her throat, trying to steady herself. "This is Andre, Cristiano Ronaldo's assistant. Cristiano would like to meet with you. We're arranging a private dinner tomorrow evening at the Ritz. Can you make it?" Her mind was spinning, her body frozen. "Wait, dinner? With Cristiano?" "That's correct. He has something he wants to discuss with you." She felt her stomach twist. This wasn't just some casual meeting. It felt purposeful, loaded with meaning. What could he possibly want? "Okay, I'll be there," she managed to say, though the words tasted foreign in her mouth. She hung up without another word, her fingers trembling as she gripped the phone. That night, Maria lay in bed, her mind racing. She tried to sleep, but each thought seemed to blur into the next. Her firing, the confrontation, the surreal twist of fate that had placed her on this path. But more than anything, she couldn't shake the sense of foreboding that lingered in the pit of her stomach. Was this really happening? Or was she on the edge of something far more complicated than she realized? The next evening, Maria found herself sitting in the opulent dining room of the Ritz, her nerves on edge. Everything about the place screamed wealth, power, and status, things she had only ever seen from afar. She couldn't help but feel out of place, her modest dress not matching the luxury surrounding her. But as she entered, a soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "Maria, over here." She turned to see Cristiano, sitting alone at a table near the back. His warm smile felt genuine, but it only heightened the tension in her chest. He gestured for her to join him, his eyes calm and inviting. There was no trace of the icy aloofness that often surrounded celebrities, just an air of quiet intensity. As she sat down, he leaned forward, his voice low. "Maria, I need to thank you for what you did the other night. It wasn't easy to step in when things were so heated, but you showed a lot of courage." Maria's heart fluttered at his words. She hadn't expected gratitude from him. Not like this. I couldn't stand by and do nothing," she said, her voice soft, unsure of what else to say. Cristiano nodded thoughtfully. "And that's why I wanted to talk to you. I've been in this world long enough to know when someone is more than what they seem. You're not just a waitress, Maria. You have potential, and I want to help you realize it." Her breath caught in her throat. This was the twist she hadn't seen coming, the recognition she'd never expected. "But how?" she asked, barely believing what she was hearing. Cristiano paused, his eyes unwavering. "I want to offer you a job, not just as my assistant, but as someone who can help manage my business ventures. You have the skills, Maria, the courage. You just need the right opportunity." Maria's mind was reeling. This was everything she had ever wanted, yet it felt like a weight she wasn't ready to bear. A job with Cristiano Ronaldo? A chance to step into a world that had always been so far out of reach. It seemed too perfect. But as she sat there, looking at him, Maria realized something. Accepting this opportunity meant stepping away from everything she knew, everything that had kept her grounded. The stakes were higher than ever. This wasn't just a chance to change her life. It was a test of who she really was. Could she step into this new world and hold on to her identity? Or would she lose herself along the way? Her heart raced as the question lingered in the air. Was she ready to prove she was more than just a waitress? Maria walked out of the Ritz that night with a heavy heart, her thoughts a whirlwind of possibilities. The job offer from Cristiano Ronaldo was more than she could have ever dreamed of. Yet it felt like a burden. She had spent her whole life in service to others, but the chance to step into a world that was nothing like what she knew was both exhilarating and terrifying. The pressure mounted with each step she took toward the street, and she realized that this wasn't just about a career change. It was about redefining herself. For the next few days, Maria wrestled with the decision. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from her friends and family, everyone congratulating her for the opportunity that seemed to fall into her lap. But in the quiet moments, when the noise faded and it was just her and her thoughts, Maria found herself questioning everything. Could she really take on such a monumental role? Could she, a woman who had always fought to stay afloat, now stand tall in a world of power, fame, and wealth? The turning point came when she sat down with Malik, her older brother, who had always been her sounding board. "You're scared, huh?" he said, as they shared a quiet evening at her apartment. "I'm terrified," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "I've spent my whole life being overlooked, and now I'm being handed everything I've ever wanted. But I don't know if I'm ready. What if I fail?" Malik smiled softly, his eyes full of understanding. "Maria, failing doesn't make you less than who you are. It's not about what you're capable of. It's about who you're willing to become. You've already proven that you have courage. It's just a matter of showing yourself what you're truly capable of." His words hit her like a wave, pushing her fears aside. She had spent her life playing small, hiding in the shadows of other people's dreams. But this was her moment to step forward and create her own path. It wasn't about playing it safe. It was about embracing the unknown, the challenges, and the risks. The next morning, Maria called Cristiano's assistant and accepted the job. She didn't know what lay ahead, but for the first time in years, she felt a spark of excitement deep within her. This wasn't just an opportunity. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where she could define her future on her own terms. As she walked into her first day of work, everything felt different. The high-rise office was intimidating, the staff efficient and polished, and the world she had stepped into was worlds apart from the one she had known. But as Maria sat at her desk, surrounded by the hum of a powerful industry, something clicked inside her. She realized that she wasn't here by luck. She was here because of the choices she had made, the courage she had shown, and the integrity she had held onto when everything seemed uncertain. Weeks passed, and Maria grew into her role, navigating the intricacies of business management with a confidence she had never known before. But more than that, she grew emotionally. She learned that success wasn't defined by wealth or fame. It was about staying true to herself and taking ownership of her life. Then one day, as she worked late into the evening, her phone buzzed with a message from Cristiano. It was simple. "You made the right choice, Maria. Keep pushing." She smiled to herself, feeling the weight of everything she had overcome. She had taken the leap and it had paid off. Not in terms of fame or money, but in the quiet satisfaction of knowing she was no longer afraid of the unknown. She had finally stepped into her own power, and for the first time, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. Maria stood by the window of her new office, looking out at the city below. The view was nothing like what she had imagined. It wasn't the sprawling landscape of wealth or luxury that had once filled her dreams, but something more personal, a reminder of how far she had come. The city, with its busy streets and towering buildings, was a symbol of the new life she was carving out for herself. A few months ago, Maria had been a waitress, stuck in the routine of an unremarkable life, unsure of her worth. Now, she was sitting at the table where decisions were made, where the world could no longer look past her. She had stepped into a new role with Cristiano Ronaldo's team, not just as an employee, but as someone who had earned her place. And it wasn't just the job, it was the realization that she was capable of so much more than she had ever believed. Her journey had come full circle. The courage she found in that moment of confrontation had led her here, to this office, to this new beginning. It wasn't just the external changes, the fancy office, the wealth, or the status, but the transformation inside. Maria had learned to trust herself, to embrace the unknown, and to take risks. She had stopped playing it safe, and in doing so, she had built a life that was hers to define. As she sat down at her desk, the weight of her past seemed distant, a shadow behind her. She had made it through the hardest part. Now it was time to build, to grow, and to shape the future she had always dreamed of. This was her new beginning, and for the first time, Maria felt ready to face whatever came next. Maria stood on the rooftop of her office building, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The city stretched out before her, a tapestry of lights flickering to life as night fell. It was a moment of quiet reflection, one she had longed for in the chaotic whirlwind of her transformation. In the months since she had taken that leap, everything had changed. Not just her career, but who she was, how she saw herself and the world around her. The office had become a place where she felt both challenged and empowered, where her voice was valued. Every decision, every action, felt like a reflection of the person she was becoming. A woman who had learned to trust her instincts and push beyond her comfort zones. But it wasn't just the work that had changed. Maria had taken the time to reconnect with the people who mattered. Malik had visited her a few weeks ago, their conversation deep and filled with pride. "You did it," he had said, his voice full of awe. "You found yourself." She smiled at the memory. Maria hadn't just found a new career. She had found her confidence, her courage, and her purpose. She had learned that her value didn't come from where she started, but from the choices she made along the way. And now, standing in the glow of the city lights, she could see that the future she had once only dreamed of was now within her grasp. A knock on her office door pulled her from her thoughts. It was one of the junior staff members, a young woman named Lily, who had recently joined the team. "Maria," she said with a hesitant smile, "I just wanted to thank you for everything. You've been such an inspiration to me. I don't think I could have made it through the first few weeks without your help." Maria felt a warmth in her chest, a confirmation that the ripple effect of her actions was already reaching others. "It's my pleasure, Lily. You're doing amazing things here. Just keep pushing. All right?" As Lily left, Maria's heart swelled with pride. She had always wanted to help others, but never in her wildest dreams did she imagine how far her influence could stretch. It wasn't just the job with Cristiano or the recognition that mattered. It was the impact she had on the people around her, the way she was helping others believe in themselves. The city below seemed brighter now, filled with endless possibilities. Maria had changed, yes, but in the process she had sparked something in others, something that would continue to grow long after she had walked away from this moment. This was her new beginning, and for the first time, she was certain that this was only the start of something even bigger.